So I'm going to be giving a formal presentation with in conjunction with the Office of Graduate Admissions on December 4th, and you'll all receive an invitation to that. All the seniors, and I think the juniors, I think everyone in the major will receive an invitation to that, the CSC major. So today is going to be more of an informal chat about graduate admissions, and I'm going to be, I'll talk a little bit about it, and then I'll let you guys ask me questions, and we'll take it from there. Generally speaking, there's, I think everybody here knows what CIDCAS is, right? That's the in applying to graduate school. That's the stands for Communication Science and Disorders Application Service. And many graduate programs are on CIDCAS. In other words, you pay, I believe, an initial fee for CIDCAS, and then you upload all of your materials on CIDCAS, and then you just select which schools you want to send them to, and they charge you for each school. We are not on CIDCAS. We are separate. We might be joining CIDCAS sometime in the future, but as of now, we're not on CIDCAS. But our applications, which are done directly to our school, the deadline is February 1st for next fall's incoming class. And I think if you want, I can share in the chat. You probably all are aware of this, but I'll just put in the chat the link to where you can get the application. Give me 1 second. Okay, so that's the link where you can get the application. And the other link I'll share in the chat is the page. Both of these pages give you information about the application process, everything that's required, also information about the program. But the second link is also where you can download the prerequisite course worksheet. As you know, there are a number, you've all been, for those of you who are majors, you're taking all of the required courses that count as prerequisites for going into the program. And then, but there's the worksheet is very good because you'll see what you've completed and what you still need to complete. Anyway, welcome, Professor Navarra. Carol said you might want to make an announcement. Do you have an announcement?
Yes. I just wanted to make one last pitch for the research study that you have been sent information about. It was in your newsletter. This study about people with HIV/AIDS and concomitant communication disorders is being spearheaded by our own Corey Cifuentes-Hollinger, who is in our graduate program right now at Queens College, and he is also a past president of NISHLA. So if you haven't done the survey yet, I do encourage you to do that. As you may or may not know, in survey research, the more participants that participate, the more robust the findings can be. So if you haven't done it yet, please do so. And if you need the link, it'll be in the newsletter, and we can have Chloe send that out one more time to you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Oh, hi, Roseanne. Welcome. So this is, I had already told everyone before you guys arrived, I'm going to be doing another presentation on December 4th with the graduate admissions department. And that'll be a more formal presentation. This is more of an informal chat. I'm going to give them an overview of the application process and then open the floor to questions and answer whatever questions people have about the application process, about the interview, all of that. So as I said before, we're not on CIDCAS. You have to apply directly to our program. I provided you links with that information. And you have to take all of the prerequisite courses. before you can start the program. So that means, come February 1st, the deadline, you may still have a couple of courses you're taking in the spring, which is fine, as long as they're completed before starting the program in the fall. Or, sometimes people notice that they're missing one of the prerequisites, let's say 3 credits in child development. Because you're supposed to, for our program, you have to have 3 credits in a course. Usually it's a psychology course. It could also be an education course, specifically in child development. So sometimes people realize, that they don't have that, so they take it over the summer. That's fine, as long as it's all completed before the start date of the fall semester. So in other words, you may get accepted into the program, but of course it's always contingent on completing all of the prerequisites before you start the program. So that's that about the prerequisites. Any question about prerequisites before I move on to the next thing? No? Okay, good.
Someone has a question.
Yes, who has a question?
Shayna?
Oh, Shayna?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the thing about the child development. So I was filling out an application on the CSD CAS website that you mentioned before, and it asked for child development, and I put down the language acquisition because I thought that that was connected to child development. But is that not enough of a child development and more focused on speech so you can't apply it to it?
Okay, that's a great question. I can't speak for other programs, but for our program, the language acquisition course does not count as a child development course. In other words, well, first of all, in our prerequisite sheet, you can't double dip, number one. Each course counts as one prerequisite. But also what we're looking for is a course in child development outside of speech language pathology. For example, at Queens College, I believe Psych 214 is a class. It's called Developmental Psychology, Infancy and Childhood. To take that class, though, you need the Intro to Psych as a prerequisite. A course in psychology that covers the lifespan is not what we're looking for. We're looking for something specifically for either infancy and childhood or adolescence. So that's one option. There's also at Queens College an education class, I believe it's 310W, Children in Cultural Contexts, Child Development. That would meet the requirements. So we're looking for a class like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions about prerequisites? That was a good question. I was very happy to get to clarify that. Okay. So then we are still at this time requiring the GREs. We're in discussions about that. I'm not sure what the future holds. Maybe we'll find another measurement to put in its place, but as of now, we're still requiring the GREs. I know a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was, I think it was the governor said that they were trying to recruit more teachers in the schools. There was a shortage, so they decided to do away with the GREs for those master's programs in education. And then a number of other programs, aside from education programs, followed suit. And so there are a lot of private schools I know now that are not requiring the GREs for graduate school. But most of the CUNY schools, I think, still are. And at this point, we still are too. But don't get too hung up on that. We don't have, understand it's one part only of the application. It is not a determining factor. It's not going to be the thing that determines for sure whether or not you're accepted into the program. And we don't have a minimum requirement either. That said, I would say when I look at the data over the past few years, I can give you a rough idea of like the kind of average GRE scores of the admitted classes. roughly, the average scores on the GREs have been roughly, in verbal, it's been about 150, maybe a little higher. Quantitative, also about 150. And in the analytical section, about, a 4 or a little higher. Now, these are averages. So that means that, from verbal, it could have been anywhere from 135 to 165, the scores of admitted students. So that's just to, so it's not minimums. These are averages I'm talking about. And I'm just want to give you an idea of, what it looks like, what the landscape looks like. So the other part of the application is, of course, your GPA, your transcripts. And we look at the transcripts and we look to see what courses you took and how you did. We do have a minimum GPA. It's 3.0 is the minimum GPA for the program. But in reality, it's the class is accepted. It's usually higher than that. It's usually, I would say, 3.5 or higher. Over the past several years, the average GPA has been about 3.8, but again, that's the average. There's some lower and some higher. Let me think. We get a lot of applications. We get, for our program, we get anywhere from nice. In our program, we get anywhere. It's nice to meet your husband, Cecilia, though briefly. In our program, we get anywhere from.
I'm sorry, it's my anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
That's so nice.
Some people,
Yeah. So in our program, we get anywhere from 130 to, we've gotten as many as 300 applications. It's crazy. And we only have 16 seats. So yeah, the reality is that it's competitive. So we GPAs, GREs, then 3 letters of recommendation we require. Only 2 of those letters of recommendation have to be from faculty, or should be from faculty. The third can also be from faculty, but it could also be from someplace where you volunteered or some, related work experience that you've had. And one of the faculty letters should be from a professor in the Communication Sciences and Disorders program. They both don't have to be, but one of them should be. And, for the other letter, I would say, get it from a professor in whose class you did really, really well and who can speak to your abilities best. And then there is the statement, the personal statement. And then I'll talk about the interview, and then I'll open the floor to questions, and you can, ask me anything that I haven't mentioned or forgot to mention.
Professor Brienza,
yes.
I just wanted to mention that I'll be speaking to the group about personal statements in a couple of weeks. So we don't have to talk too much about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. So I'm only going to tell them basically one thing.
Okay.
Okay.
I also want to add one note about the references is that our department is trying to reduce some of the burden of reference writing on our faculty, because we get a lot of requests over and over again. And we try to take them on. So I'm going to suggest, if you need a reference, ask early. And second, the department undergrad is requesting that you only solicit references from 2 CSE professors. So it could be somebody else in linguistics, doesn't have to be, it can be in the LCD department, but only 2 from the speech and hearing side. And that the third should be from another area, another department. So please keep that in mind as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Roseanne. So, there's a prompt for the statement on our website. And I think it needs to be changed. It hasn't been changed, but it's somewhat problematic. And this is very important. I want you all to pay attention to this. The prompt says something to the effect of, why do you want to come to Queens College, master's program in speech language pathology? it's not a good prompt, because what winds up happening is then we always wind up getting a certain number of essays where people tell us why they want to come to Queens College and basically tell us all about our program, what they like about our program. And, we know all about our program. Well, so I would say do not take that prompt literally, right? And Professor Navarro is going to talk to you more about what goes into a good statement. That's great. But basically, your statement should be more about you, your journey, how you got here, why you want to be a speech language pathologist, or something along those lines. Not all about our program and why you want to come here as opposed to somewhere else. It's more about why you want to be a speech language pathologist. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, we'll talk about the interview. Not all programs have interviews. And I can't really speak to the interview process to other programs except what I've heard from students. Apparently, some have individual interviews, some have group interviews. I hear that some have a written component to their interview process. At Queens College, we do not have a written component. If we get like 150 to 300 applications, we usually will conduct maybe anywhere from 70 to 80 interviews. And then from there, we have to accept 16. You can imagine how hard it is. The hardest part of my job is not being able to say yes to everybody, because we get so many wonderful, applications. But I would say that our interview, we usually do it in groups of 3, and it's informal. It's a conversation, a chat. We want to get to know you. I would say think of 2 things. One is, there's a balance in when you present yourself. First of all, dress professionally. I mean, that shouldn't have to be said, but I'll say it anyway. If you have a sports jacket, wear the sports jacket. If you don't have one, wear a nice shirt, or whatever, something, professional attire, not a suit, but, professional attire. And, and when you present yourself, think in terms of finding that balance between being, warm, personable, and professional, right? So, you don't want to err on the side of being, too casual and you want to be your authentic self, but your professional authentic self, right? So just keep that in mind too when you're on the interview. You don't want to be stiff. We want to see, we want to get to know you on a personable level, but you're also entering a profession. And that's it for now. Any questions? Any questions about the process? Where is
Shane has a question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Who
Shane has a question.
Yeah,
Yes.
Shane.
no, I just was curious. So you said that after you apply, then there's only a certain amount of interviews that are given. How soon after the application process do you typically find out if you got like the opportunity to have an interview?
Good question. Thank you for that. It's a process. We, regardless of how many applications we get, we go through each and every one. I chair the committee, so I look at every single application. I read every transcript. I read every letter of recommendation. I read every statement. And so it takes time. So what happens is, we usually start calling people and making appointments like a couple of weeks into February, right? And then we do it on a rolling basis because we're reading applications as we go. It's a lot of applications to get through. So, you could get a call for an interview, as early as as early as the first or second week in February, or you could get one a little bit later. Good question.
And if I could just add to that, sometimes as people are sending in their applications, they may or may not be complete. And so as the applications are completed and the system informs us whose applications are complete, meaning that you have submitted everything that you need to submit, that's when we start going through them. So we are examining the applications as they are completed. We're not really looking at the incomplete applications until they're complete. And so that's why it's on this rolling basis. So you may find you submit your application and then you find out that there's something missing, right? And so once you provide that missing piece, it goes into the complete file and then we get alerted and then we can read it. So just be mindful of that. And it's not a horrible thing to not have your application complete immediately when you submit it. You just want to make sure that that it doesn't take too long to get that figured out. Okay, because we know that there are always glitches in systems with, getting your transcripts and, things like that, or maybe one of your letters didn't get submitted when you thought it was going to be submitted. So just keep on top of your applications after you submit it. It's not a good idea to assume that everything has been taken care of. So it's really up to you to make sure that everything that needs to be in your application is there, because it's not until it's complete that it gets reviewed. And I can't say that about all programs, but that's certainly how we are looking at that. So I think that's good to be mindful of.
And also a couple of important points based on what you just said. One is that even if your application is not complete, submit it by the February 1st deadline, because that's a hard deadline. We don't accept applications after that deadline. So even if it's not complete, just submit it by February 1st. Number two, the thing that is usually the thing that's most impacts the completeness of the application is a transcript. That's what I find. So understand that even if you took one class at LaGuardia, or that we need the transcript, and it has to come directly from the college. So any college level classes you took in any institution, we have to get for the application to be complete, we need a copy of the transcript from the college. Oh, and then this is also very important. Last year, I think it was, we had an issue where somebody thought she submitted her application and it didn't go through. So be very careful on the website. Just because you pay that's not the end of it. I think you click, I'm not sure how it works, but you click, I think, a pay button, but then there's a final submit button that you also have to press. So make sure that you've pressed every single pay and submit button that you have to press when you submit your application so that it goes through. And then after you've submitted it, if there's a way to check to see that it was submitted, do that as well. Good.
Sal, do you know if there's an email generated through graduate admissions once the application is submitted?
I don't know, but I don't think there is.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
I was going to ask, are the applications looked at all on February 1st, or they're kind of looked at as they come in throughout the months?
You mean, how are they read?
Yes.
Yeah, well, no, as they come in.
Yeah,
We
okay.
look at them as they come in, because I start looking at them before February 1st, because there's too many. It's like, I mean, I can only read so many applications in a row on a given day. So I get started as early as I can on them. But yeah, so we do look at them. I do start to look at them a little bit before February 1st, but we don't make any decisions about interviews until after all of the applications are in.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And if I could just add, the decision-making process has nothing to do with when you submit your application. So if you tend to be an early bird and, you have everything together and you want to submit it by, December, or, as soon as it's open, fine, but that doesn't impact the decision-making process. So February 1st is the deadline. If you want to get it in earlier, that's great, but don't feel pressured. It's not like when you first started applying to college and there's early decision and early action and, all of these other things. I only know about this now because my daughter is applying to college, but the day that you submit your application has no bearing on the decision-making process. So as long as it's in by February 1st, it will be reviewed in its entirety, and we have our system for how we evaluate all the applications.
Okay, so a couple of questions came in that I want to address. One is, the most recent one is about the high school transcript for AP classes. No, we don't need the high school transcript, as long as on the college transcript, it shows that the AP class was accepted by the college. If the college accepted it, that's good. So somebody asked about a super score, that's, and they explained it very well here. Carol explained it very well, thank you. So if you take the GRE twice, you submit your highest scores. Right? You take your highest verbal, you take your highest quantitative, you take your highest analytical. And that's what we'll consider. We consider the highest scores if you took it twice. And how much does GRE scores matter? So as I mentioned before, it's just a part of the application. It's not a determining factor. We don't have a minimal requirement for the score. That's the only questions I see right now. Is it opened now? Rachel, I'm not sure what you meant by that. You meant the application process? The application process is not open.
Yeah.
No, not yet. I think December it opens, or I'm not sure of the date.
I also wanted to ask about a resume portion. Is there a portion where you can add the resume onto the application?
Yes, but you have to send that. Let me take a quick look and see if I have handy here where you would send that. You send it to, I don't think I have it here, but you send it to the graduate admissions, and they
And a
will,
resume is not required, but if you want to submit it, by all means, do.
yeah, the resume is not required, that's right, but it's nice to get it. If you have it, send it. But I'm looking to see if I have here the link or an email where you should send it. I'll look. If I find it, I'll put it in the chat. But you send it to graduate admissions office, and they will add it to your application, because there's no place in the actual application to put it in.
Yeah, I started the application and I saw that there wasn't a portion for it, and yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking to see as we speak if I have the information about where to send it. No, I don't have it here handy, but I'll look for it, and if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I'll
I
email it
just
to you,
wanted to
Carol.
know, does anybody have any questions specific to interviews? Because I know we were looking to ask Professor Brienza, some of those questions and find out a little bit about the interview process itself, right? I'm going to be talking about personal statements. Professor Brienza is giving you the overview. Professor McCall is going to talk about how to apply, first using CIDCAS for your other applications. So does anybody have any interview specific questions? Because I think that that's kind of like the personal statement. I feel that people get worried about, whether they can ask questions, what kinds what might be a question that somebody might ask, and how, or are there certain things that you should or shouldn't talk about? So if anybody has specific, questions about that, now is certainly the time to raise those while we have Professor Brienza here.
And by the way, I don't know if you saw, I put in the chat where the email address where you would send a resume if you want to have it added to your application.
Thank you. And Shayna also has another question.
Yes, Shayna.
So I guess just bouncing off the idea of asking questions about like the interview process itself, are there any specific things that, like, obviously if someone like had an internship or something, to mention that, but are there any other things outside of work experience that you really look for in the interview process?
The truth of the matter is that it's not, when I conduct the interviews, it's not scripted, and I don't always ask the same questions. But one thing we do say most times, I remember to say this, before I end the interview, I ask people, is there anything about you that you want us to know that we didn't talk about yet in this interview? And that would give you the opportunity, if we haven't talked yet about an internship experience that you wanted to share with us, or something else that you became passionate about, something that really influenced you regarding speech language pathology. Maybe it was clinical observations, or maybe it was a course that you took that or anything that you might want us to know about you. We usually leave room for that at the end of the interview.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There was also a good question in the chat that asked, what would make an application stand out to you? There are a lot of us that are great students and we try hard to get in, but there's only so many places.
Yes, I know. The what makes an application stand out is the whole package, really. If it's if your GPA is good, and you get your letters of recommendation are strong, and your statement is very moving or strong in some way, the whole thing. I would say that again, our particular program is competitive. There are rumors that I'd like to dispel. I've heard rumors that you have to have a 3.9 or a 4.0 to get into our program. That's not true. As I mentioned before, there's a range in GPAs, there's a range in GRE scores. But that said, you want to be realistic also and see, do you think you're a competitive candidate? It is a small program. We only accept 16. So, when you're applying to programs, do a little research on the program. Look to see, if you can, on the internet, what is the range of GPA or GRE scores for that program. See, is the program a good fit for you? Is it a reach? Is it, and you're going to apply to a few programs, I'm assuming, and you may have one reach, two reaches. You're going to have some that are a good match. And I don't know, what your resources are or what your life situation is, but if you can also consider programs, if you feel you're not competitive for some of these programs in New York, if you can consider programs in other states, maybe look there too. But you were going to say something, Professor Navarra?
Yes, I'm looking up EdFind on ASHA, where you can actually go to the website. I'm going to put it in the chat as soon as I pull it up, and you can look at every graduate program in the country, and it will tell you the range of the GPA scores of students that have been admitted in the past X number of years, whether or not they want a GRE, things like that. So on ASH's website, you can do some of that research without actually having to go to the graduate programs themselves. So I'm gonna pull that up and put it in the chat. Okay.
Oh, fabulous.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Don't psych yourself out. Don't think, oh, I'm not competitive, I'm not going to get in. You don't know. If you feel, that your all the criteria is within range, then you should apply. But also be realistic. It's a numbers game at some point. There are so many applications and only so many seats available. But stay positive. All of you will be somewhere in the fall. I'm pretty confident about that. Any other questions?
And actually, if I could just say one more thing about the interviews, in many, if not most places, just because of the number of applicants there are, interviews do tend to be in small groups. And so what the committee or whoever is interviewing you will also be looking at is how you interact with one another. Okay, so like Professor Brienza said, you don't want to be stiff, you don't want to be too casual, you want to be professional, but also I would say to be mindful of how you are responding to other people in the group. And I think that will also depend on how the interview is conducted, what the interviewer is asking of the students themselves, but that's also something to keep in mind. Would you agree, Sal?
Yes, absolutely. And Julia just wrote, during the interview, what made someone stand out to you? That's a tough question, Julia, because for each person, it was an individual thing about that person that made them stand out. So there's no one thing, but I would say that, this is a field that you're going into, hopefully because, you feel a passion about helping people. You want to help use whatever talents you have and train them and develop them so that you can be of service to people who are struggling with various challenges. And I think I like to see that perspective, from people, that they're not going into this field because it's a career. I mean, look, some people go into the field because their mother said, look, this is a good field to go into. That's perfectly valid. That's great. I like to think once people are in the field, that they sort of, catch the calling and say, this is really meaningful. This is something that it's a wonderful career. And it gives you such a wonderful sense of purpose. And at the end of the day, even if you're exhausted and if you're working in the hospital or preschool or wherever you're working school, you spent your hours, helping people, and I would say a very important trait in that is not just being technically good at what you do, but being compassionate for the people you're working with. So, any other questions?
I was just going to add, and there's always something to learn, so you'll never, ever be bored, ever. I promise you.
And, we don't expect you, don't be in our interview anyway. We don't expect you, we're not going to be quizzing you on anything.
Right.
We're not going to be quizzing you on the cranial nerves or anything like that. You're coming in, we don't expect you to know what you're going to learn in graduate school. So, but there are other interviews I've heard where there are some written components, but I don't know what kinds of questions they ask.
Rachel asked, How long does the interview take? And Professor Navarro said about 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? I hope this was helpful. Carol, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, I feel like everybody was able to learn a lot. I learned a lot from just being able to hear everybody speak.
Great. Great, good. So I hope it was helpful. Again, December 4th, I'm going to be doing another presentation. I'll probably be covering a lot of the same ground we covered here. Might be one or two new things.